Hello friends, we'll be discussing an illustration which will again have details of certain case studies that we have to study. So let's figure it out. Now, when we discuss about the case studies, we have understood that in case if there is any discount, par premium, how the things have to be dealt with. We'll have certain similar background here, but with a little bit of twist in the question. So let's start with the case studies that we have to discuss. Again, there will be 3 case studies that we have to discuss here. So let's start with the same. Now, the first case refers to AB Company Limited issued 6,010% debentures of rupees 100 each payable as follows. So 20 on application was the amount that was supposed to be received, 30 on allotment, and 50 on final call. So when we are discussing about these details, we understand that AB is there, AB company has issued certain details. Now in all these case studies, we'll understand certain calls in arrears. Now, the question, or rather the case one, also states that all the debentures were paid except for 500 debentures where the final call money wasn't paid. This is the only information that we have been provided with. Now, there is no reissue, there is no forfeiture that has to be done in here. Only detail which has been mentioned here. We have to prepare a balance sheet and pass the journal entries. Now, this was related to case 1. In every case scenario, this is at par, the next one will be at premium. Let's start with the next case study. Case 2 refers to XY Limited Company issued 5,012% debentures of rupees 100 at rupees 120, payable as follows. Now, 120 was supposed to be further divided as 50 rupees on application, 40 rupees on allotment, which includes the premium as well, and 30 rupees on the final call. Now, one holder who had around 1,000 debentures didn't pay the allotment and the final call money. We have to prepare the balance sheet as well as the journal entries for the same. Now, the next case will refer to issue of debentures at discount. Now, case 3 refers to ABC Company Limited who issued 10,014% debentures of rupees 200 each at 20% discount here, payable which were as follows here. So here, the payable amount was 50 rupees on application, 65 rupees on allotment, and 65 rupees on final call. The allotment money also includes the details of things that we need to talk about, which will be for certain things like the first thing that we can talk about on allotment here will be this includes, or rather, this is after the discount being deducted from them. So we need to take care, or rather take the 20% discount into consideration when the allotment entry is supposed to be passed. Now, in the last case, all the shares or all the debentures were duly subscribed, duly amount received. So we have to just pass the journal entries and prepare a balance sheet accordingly. So let's start with the preparation of case 1 first. So the first entry will refer to receipt of application money on debentures. Let's start with that. Now in case 1, there were somewhere around, or rather we can talk about the total number of shares being, or rather total number of debentures being issued multiplied by the application money will give us the total applications we have received. So that will be 6,000 multiplied by 20 rupees on application. So the first entry has been passed. The next entry will refer to transfer of this debenture application to debenture account. Let's start with that. So the entry has been also passed related to that. That means debenture application account debit to 20% debenture capital, or rather 10% debenture itself. Now, the next will be allotment due. Let's pass the entry here. On allotment, we're supposed to take around 30 rupees. So 6,000 multiplied by 30 will give you the allotment due amount. Now, after allotment being due, the next phase is to receive the allotment money. So let's pass the entry for that. So the next entry that we have passed here is receipt of allotment money. Now, the next category refers to being final call due here. Now, on final call, the share value was 50 rupees per share. That means per debenture, we're supposed to take that much of value. So 6,000 multiplied by 50 will be the amount that we are expecting here. So debenture final call account debit to 10% debenture has been mentioned. The next phase will be the total of, or rather the next phase as we have to discuss here is the receipt of final call money, which will have calls in arrears as discussed in case 1. Now, in the question, it was mentioned that there is one shareholder who didn't pay 500 debentures final call value. So that is our calls in arrears. So out of 3 lakh, 25,000 is what we haven't received. So total amount that we must have received is 2,75,000. Let's mention that in the bank account. So that is the total of receipt of final call money, which we have mentioned. Now, the next part is preparation of balance sheet for case 1. Let's study that. Now here, on the liability side, we'll have exact balance, but on the asset side, we'll have certain differences in the balance. The reason being, there are certain calls in arrears. So we'll be mentioning that under miscellaneous part, which will be calls in arrears, because that is an expectation from the shareholder or from the debenture holder for us to be received here. So let's mention that. So the first part that we're going to do here is the 10% debentures total that we have. So in the entry, whatever we have mentioned related to those debentures, let's mention the total of 10% debenture. You can either mention the share capital like this or the debenture capital like this, or there is an alternative way which you can mention it like here. So either of these methods can be followed. Either you can mention the calls of arrears on the asset side, or you can directly subtract that calls of arrears from the total debenture balance, and that will be the exact debenture value that we have here. I would recommend you go for the second one because calls of arrears cannot be mentioned on the asset side. Hence, this is what we'll be doing. Now, let's go and figure out the bank account balance here. That is cash and cash equivalent. So the bank balance that we have figured out here is 5,75,000. That brings you a total of equivalent balance sheet, that is liability equals to asset 5,75,000. Now, this gives you the total of first balance sheet be tallied out. On the contrary, if you didn't have to subtract calls of arrears from the share or rather the debenture balance, you can mention it on the credit side here. That will give you an exact balance of 6 lakh on both sides. Here, as we've already subtracted it, hence you're seeing the balance of 5,75,000 as the balance sheet tally here. Now, here we complete the case 1. Let's go on to the case 2 now. Now, the next case will be the case 2 that we have to discuss. So let's start with case 2 now. Now, when we are discussing about case 2, we'll first transfer or rather we'll first mention the application receipt entry. Now, as this is for XY Company Limited who had issued 5,000 debentures of rupees 100 each, which were at a premium here. So we have to mention that same thing accordingly. That will be adjusted in the allotment here. And application money that was discussed here was 50 rupees on application. So we have to take care of that accordingly. Let's mention that. So the total application money that we should be receiving here is 5,000 multiplied by 50, which will be somewhere around 2,50,000. Let's mention that and let's mention the narration as well. Now, whatever application money we have received, you have to transfer it to the debenture account. So let's transfer that. So whatever entry we have mentioned here, that is debenture application account debit to 12% debenture has been mentioned. Now let's figure out the total narration here. Now the next entry that will be passing here is the allotment due, which also includes the total premium that is supposed to be taken into consideration. So let's mention that as well. That means allotment due on debentures. Now, the total allotment money was 40 rupees, which includes a premium of 20 rupees. So 20 rupees is the allotment capital, 20 rupees is the premium that we have to discuss. So let's transfer that amount accordingly here. Now, as there is allotment due has been mentioned, the next will be receipt of allotment. But while mentioning the receipt of allotment, there is one shareholder who had around 1,000 debentures who didn't pay the allotment and the final call money as well. So we have to consider that calls in arrears here. So on 1,000 shares, 40 rupees not received. That means somewhere around 40,000 we haven't received here. So in total, out of 2 lakh rupees, if 40,000 is gone away, 1,60,000 is what we have received. Now, after this receipt, we have to mention the first or final call due. So let's mention that. Now, on final call, we're supposed to take 30 rupees on total debentures. So we'll mention that accordingly. So being receipt of final call, we're supposed to receive somewhere around 1,50,000, which we have mentioned here. Let's mention the last entry of case 2, which will refer to receipt of final call, including the call scenarios. So out of 1,50,000, 30,000 is call scenarios because 1,000 shareholder who didn't pay the final call, that is 30,000 didn't pay up. That means 1,20,000 is what we would have received here. So with this, we complete the case 2 journal entries. Now it's time to prepare the balance sheet here. As the earlier case, we had around 1 call scenarios. In this case, we have around 2 call scenarios. So make sure you follow the procedure according to that. Let's start with the balance sheet preparation. Now, 12% debentures total minus call scenarios is how we'll be showing up the balance here. Now, when you're describing the calls in arrears here, you have to make a small change. Whenever calls in arrears are supposed to be described as there is security premium which hasn't been paid and that has been mixed up with allotment, so you have to segregate that. Now, When it comes to capital calls in arrears, that means the amount which is only referred to allotment itself and no premium attached to it. 20 rupees hasn't been paid by that person who is holding 1000 shares, and 30 rupees of final call hasn't been paid by him. So that will give you a total of 50 rupees which hasn't been paid by him only in terms of capital. Additional 20 rupees which will be added, which will be a part of securities premium now. So that has to be subtracted separately. Now, capital calls in arrears will be a total of this 50,000 out of 5 lakh will be subtracted, then the balance will be 4,50,000, which will be only debenture capital what we have received. So when it comes to securities premium, 5,000 into 20 is what we were expecting, out of which we have only received, or rather we haven't received 1,000 into 20. That means 20,000 we haven't received out of 50,000. So total amount that we have received is only 30,000 here. So this is what we have mentioned in the securities premium. Now it's time to mention the cash balance or bank balance here, which is equivalent to 5,30,000. Now let's tally the balance sheet here. So case 2 balance sheet has been prepared. Now it's time to prepare the last case 3 journal entries and balance sheet. So let's start with that. Now when it comes to case 3, it refers to ABC Company Limited here. We'll first pass the receipt of application money of debentures. Now, when we're talking about debentures here 10,000 debentures were issued for 14% debentures basically. 14%, 10,000 debentures was issued. Application money was 50 rupees. So 10,000 multiplied by 50 will give you the details of application money here. Now, the issue price of this debenture was 200 rupees, but there was a discount here that was provided at the rate of 20%. That means the actual or original issue price would be 180 rupees. Now, when it comes to allotment, or rather, first that we have received this application money, we have to transfer this to the debenture account. Let's transfer that now. Now that application money has been transferred, the next item will be to due the allotment money. Let's start with that. Now, before we could go ahead and mention the allotment due, we need to understand that there is discount here. Hence, you have to take that into consideration right away. So, let's mention that here. Now, the allotment total money was 65 rupees. However, this includes the discount of 20, or it doesn't. Basically, it doesn't include the discount of 20 rupees. Hence, 65 plus 65 total gives you an amount of 130 rupees, in which if you add 50 rupees, that is total of 180. So you have to add discount total here, and only allotment is 65 rupees. So make sure you don't confuse yourself there. So the total discount that we have provided here is somewhere around 2 lakh rupees. The allotment money that we have received, or rather we are supposed to receive here, is 6,50,000. So when we transfer, or rather we mention the receipt of allotment, it will be only 6,50,000 here. Only for the sake of accommodation of discount here, we have mentioned a total of 8,50,000 under debenture capital. Now, the next entry that we have to pass here is receipt of allotment money. Now, after this allotment, we have to mention the second last entry, that is final call due. Now on final call as well, we had around 10,000 shares multiplied by 65 is the final call. So 6,50,000 is the amount that we are expecting here. Now, after the final call being due, as there are no call scenarios, nothing related to this or rather this case study, we just have to mention the receipt of final call money. So let's mention that, post which we'll go towards the last part, that is balance sheet preparation. So that refers to final call money receipt, that is bank account debit to 14% or rather debenture final call money. Now it's time to mention the total of balance sheet here. Let's start with the balance sheet now. Now we'll be starting off with the balance sheet here. So let's start mentioning the balances details. The only three details that we have to mention is the debenture, the discount and the bank value. Let's start with that. So the first total that we'll be mentioning here is the bank value or cash equivalent. Let's start with that. So that comes to a total of 18 lakh rupees. The next will be miscellaneous expenditure again on the asset side because that refers to the discount here. So discount has been also mentioned. Now the next part that we have to mention is the 14% debenture balance. That gives you a total of 20 lakh. Now it's time to mention the balance sheet total. On the liability side, we have a total of 20 lakh here. Similarly, on the asset side, we have a total of 18 lakh plus 2 lakh, which gives you a total of 20 lakhs. So with this, we have finalized the balance sheet for case 3 as well. And with this, we complete our illustration. I hope this video has given you a clarity about how to go ahead with different kind of scenarios where there is calls in arrears in terms of issue of debentures. So thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and keep subscribing to Ekeeda.